this is Matt at LSAT Lab. Today's lesson is on hybrid games in the logic game section. So in today's lesson on hybrid games, we need to cover the following. So first, how to spot a hybrid game, what the process is for approaching one, and then talk about some of the different features that you might experience, whether that be open versus closed games, those games that involve subgroups, and a technique called framing. So in the world of logic games, 12% of all games are mixed games, and 8% of all games are hybrid games. So hybrid belongs to the mixed family. So hybrids are a fairly common game type, not extremely common, but it's definitely one of the harder game types out there. So when you see one, you should definitely expect that it's going to take you a little bit more time. So the way you spot a hybrid game is that there's some combination of grouping and ordering. Whenever the game combines both grouping and ordering, we call that a hybrid game. The rules that you should expect to see in one are those where you have fixed positions, relative relationships, fixed relationships, and conditional relationships. These are all common rules to most game types in addition to hybrid games. So the first step in any game is to create a game board. And in this game, let's go ahead and see if we can put together a game board that's going to help us organize the information so that we can make inferences as we go. So we know that the three highest placing teams in a high school debate tournament are the teams F, G, and H. So we're going to try to rank order these teams. And it tells us that each team has exactly 2 members. So we have 2 members on the first place team, 2 members on the second place team, and 2 members on the third place team. Now, we don't know whether the team from F, from G, or from H is first, second, or third, but we do know that there's going to be some element of ordering these teams, it looks like. They also tell us that our players are M, N, O, P, S, and T. So we have 6 players, we have 6 slots, 2 players per team, and we're going to need to order the teams. So we still don't have quite a perfect game board because we don't exactly know how the teams are going to play out in terms of the ordering of these teams. But let's keep going a little further. Let's see what we find out. Remember, the second step is going to be able to notate the rules. And sometimes the rules can also help us with the game board if there's any part of it that hasn't quite fallen into place. In the first rule, they tell us that S is on the team from G. So we don't know which team is G. So let's just go ahead and notate this off to the side. We can just simply put a subscript next to S to tell us that it's going to be on the G team. The second rule tells us that T is on the second place team. Now, we could put this on the game board, but because we don't have a game board finalized quite yet, let's go ahead and just write it off to the side as a rule. It tells us in the third rule that M and P cannot be on the same team, so we can represent that with an anti-block. The fourth rule tells us that the team on which P is assigned must be higher ranked than the team on which N is assigned, so that P is going to come before N in the ordering element. And they tell us that the team from G places higher than the team from H, so that the G team needs to place in front of the H team. Okay, so we got the rules notated. Now, what we want to do is think about any inferences that fall into place, and this is a good opportunity to rethink the game board and finalizing it before we hit the questions. So, as we're making inferences, maybe it's a good idea to first let's see if there's any floaters, any players that are not involved in the rules. And in this case, O is a floater. It's not involved in any of the rules. So now let's think about the last rule. G must be ahead of H. There are only a couple of ways in which we can get these 2 teams into this order that satisfies this rule. So if G were the second place team, H would have to be the third place team. And we could substitute the ordering of the teams with the actual team names. So that if we know that the team on the far left is the first place team, and the team in the middle is the second place team, and the team on the far right is the third place team, if G were to go second, H would have to go third. And there are a couple of other ways in which we can order the G and the H in a 1, 2, 3 ordering. If G were to go first, H could go third, or H could go second. And so what we can do is we can create 3 game boards, and where we map out the placement of the teams 1, 2, and 3, and then try to apply the rest of the rules within those frames. So for example, we know that S is going to be on the team from G. And so in each one of those frames, we can go ahead and put S down now. We also know that G is going to be on the second place team, so we can go ahead and put T down as well. At this point, M and P can't be together, but we don't know where M and P are going to go. But if we look at the next rule about P and N, since P needs to place in front of N, in frame A, there's only one way in which we could put P in front of N, which is to put P on the team from F and N on the team from H. And because we've now placed P, we can go back to the third rule, and we know that M and P aren't together, so M would have to go onto the team from H. And that leaves only one open spot, so O will have to go on the team from F. If we look down at frames B and C, however, we can't really place P and N into the teams since there are many different ways in which they could go in each of those frames. We can't place M and P together. We've already dealt with the G before H rule, and the S is on team G and the T is on team 2. So we're essentially kind of limited with frames B and C. But because we got the entire set of elements in frame A, that might have been a worthwhile endeavor. It's not great to have 2 of your frames fairly open, but we've got at least 2 of those players out of the 6 in each one of those frames, and we have one frame completely filled out, and that should speed us up as we go to answer the questions. So as we go to the questions, now that we have our frames and our inferences mapped out, here's the rules question. Go ahead and hit pause on the lesson. Try this one on your own, and when you're ready to work it through together, hit play again. All right, welcome back. So again, this is a rules question. We're just going to apply the rules one at a time, knock out the wrong answers, and whatever's left remaining should be the right answer. So if we look at the first rule, that S is on the team from G, since none of these answer choices are really telling us where the teams are going, whether F, G, and H, whether they're the first place, second place, or third place teams, it's going to be really hard to apply that first rule. But if we take the second rule, we know that T is on the second place team, and in answer choice A, it's on the third place team. So we could use the second rule to get rid of A. If we look at the next rule, M and P can't be on the same team as each other. In answer choice B, M and P are together. We can get rid of answer choice B. If we look at the next rule, that P is before N, in answer choice C, they have N placing in front of P. So let's get rid of that. Now, we're down to 2 choices. The last rule is about G and H, and we don't really know where G and H are going to go. But if we think about the first rule and the last rule in combination with each other, since we know that G has to place in front of H, so the team from G has to place in front of the team from H, that means that the team from G cannot finish third. Since S must be on the team from G, it tells us that S cannot be third. So it's combining the first and last rules allows us to figure out that S cannot be on the third place team, and in answer choice D, S is on the third place team. So we can get rid of D, and that allows us to choose E with confidence. So the next question is called a local question, where they give us that new piece of information. We want to plug it in, see which frames apply, and then use that work in order to answer this question. They're telling us that P is on the team from H. Now, in frame A, P is not on the team from H, so we can ignore frame A for this particular question. And if we're going to put P on the team from H in frames B and C, we can go ahead and just put them down. But if we notice that, by putting P into the team from H on frame B, we're not able to get N on a lower placed team. And unfortunately, that would make it impossible to place N into the game board. So frame B also becomes impossible, and we can ignore that one as well. So now we're really left with frame C. Now we can definitely place N into the team from F because N is going to come after P. There's 2 players left. There's M and there's O. M and P can't be together, but there's no risk of that. O is a floater. It can go anywhere. So M and O can really kind of flip-flop back and forth between G and F in the first and third place teams. So we don't know where M and O are going to go, but we do know where the other 4 are going to go, and we know the order of the teams as well. So we can use that now to answer the question. They're asking for what could be the case. So the right answer is not something that we know for sure necessarily, but it's something that's possible within the frame that we've completed here. So answer choice A says that O is on the first place team. Again, we don't know exactly where O is going to go, but it looks like it's possible to put O on the first place team. Let's go ahead and hold on to answer choice A and see if we can rule out the others so we can pick A with confidence. At this point, it might be a little tough to feel confident picking A since maybe there's something that we missed along the way. If you look at B, P is on the first place team. Well, in our frame C, P is definitely on the second place team, so we can get rid of B. If you look at answer choice C, M is on the second place team. Well, there's no room left on the second place team. T and P are there, so M can't go into the second place team. Get rid of that. If we look at answer choice D, N is on the second place team, but again, we know N is on the third place team. Let's get rid of that. And then finally, E, S is on the second place team. In this hypothetical, or in this frame, we actually have S on the first place team, so we know E is not possible. We can get rid of that as well. And so now we know that A actually was the right answer. So the next question is a global question. So we really need to consider all of the frames when answering this one. And they're saying that S's teammate could be any one of the following except. So if we ever see a possibility of S on the same team as any of these players, we can go ahead and get rid of it. If we take a look at answer choice A, S with M, well, that's not the case in frame A, but maybe we can make it the case in frame B or in frame C. So if we try plugging in M into the same team as S in frame B, we know that P needs to be before N, so P would have to go in F, and N would have to go into H. And then O would be the last one left over to go into H as well. We can create a hypothetical that satisfies all the rules and where S is together with M, so we can get rid of it. So if we look at answer choice B, S together with N, in frame A, S can't go together with N because it's with T. And in frame B, S can't go together with N because N can't go first. And S is forced into the first position in both frames B and in C. So this looks like it might be a contender. Let's hold on to B. For C, S is with O. Well, if we keep our work from answer choice A, remember M and O are fairly flexible. So we could literally just take M and O and flip them. And let's see if that satisfies the rule. S is still with G. T is on the second place team. M and P aren't together. P is before N. And the team from G is ahead of the team from H. It satisfies all the rules. So we now know that S can go with O. Get rid of it. If you look at D, S with P, well, we could put P into the first place team with S in frame B. We'd put N following it somewhere. We could put it into team 2 with T. And then M and O in team H. We can come up with a hypothetical that satisfies all the rules. So yeah, S can go with P. And S with T, well, that's possible in frame A. So we can get rid of that as well. And that leaves us with B as the right answer. So some features to keep in mind as you're working on hybrid games. So some games are going to be closed. Some games are going to be open. In closed games, they tell you how many are on each team, like the last game. In some games, they don't tell you how many players on each team. That's going to be an open game. 77% of all hybrid games are closed, while 23% of all hybrid games are open. Let's take this for example. A radio DJ will select songs from among 7 to play during her show. So this doesn't tell us exactly how many are in and how many are out or how many are on each team. But if we were to change it such that there are going to be exactly 4 that are played, and that they're going to be ordered from first to fourth. So what we have here is a game where we know exactly how many are going to be played and how many are not going to be played, as well as we're being asked to order the ones that are being played. So we've got in-out grouping plus ordering, and that gives us a hybrid game. And because they're telling us exactly how many are in and how many are out, then we can use slots, and that makes it closed. If it was open, we'd simply try to do the game without slots, which makes it much more difficult. So another feature that you will sometimes need to deal with are those games that involve subgroups. 27% of hybrids involve subgroups, different kinds of players. So if they tell you that some of the songs are going to be pop songs and some of the songs are going to be country songs, you're going to want to separate them in the roster. Now, some people like to find other ways of distinguishing the players so that as they're placing them into the game board, it's clear who is who. And so sometimes you'll see uppercase letters and lowercase letters in order to distinguish which one is belonging to which subset. That works well when you have 2 different kinds of players, but it doesn't so work when you have 3 different kinds of players. Another strategy that some people use is to use subscripts when they're writing out the cast of characters. This helps when you're trying to place players onto the game board and keeping track who is who. Generally speaking, however, the players are separated apart from each other in the alphabet by far enough that it's fairly easy to keep track of who is who. Or at least I find it to be so. If you don't, go ahead and use the subscripts or uppercase, lowercase letters in order to help you keep track of who is who. And finally, frames. which occurs in 39% of all hybrid games, is a very powerful tool to help you move faster as you're moving through the questions. One technique that you might use in order to help create frames, which is what we used in the example game, is the idea of a partial tree. Sometimes using that partial tree or that relative relationship, if one of those players is limited to a couple different places in the game board, then you could use that to create a couple of different frames by which you can then answer the questions. So by placing those players down in that limited way and then using the rest of the rules to make further inferences, that can give you a head start on the game. But another way you might be able to create a frame is with blocks. So for example, if they told you that M and O had to have been together in that game, and there are only 3 teams, well, there's only 3 places where that block could go. So then you might create frames around placing that block. So remember, the process for logic games is to first create the game board, then notate the rules, then make any inferences that follow and potentially look for frames, and then answer the questions. You spot a hybrid game by recognizing that it's asking you to do both a grouping task and an ordering task. The game board that you want to use for a hybrid game is generally a column chart for the teams and then slots for the ordering. And the rules you want to keep in mind are fixed positions, relative relationships, fixed relationships, and conditional relationships. The way in which you create frames are with blocks and partial trees. So that's it for hybrid games. I invite you to check out some of these other lessons or visit us today at lsatlab.com.